Hi, I'm John Beck, and in this CIS 117 video, I'm going to show you how to install your SQL databases by running the SQL create scripts on your SQL Server Management Studio to connect to your SQL Express database. And so let's show you how to get those scripts and download them to your local machine. You'll find a different video if you are working on Amazon Web Services Cloud. There are a couple of things that I've set up differently there. Although in general, the procedure is very, very similar. Certainly everything you do in SQL Server Management Studio is going to be essentially identical. Okay, so what we see on the background behind the talking head on this screen is our course shell. And we have under course resources, files you will need this turn. And the page is SQL database build scripts for assignments and textbook examples. And here you will find all of the textbook publishers provided scripts, as well as those that I have created for the two data sets that we alternatively use in this course. We may use both of these in a given term, or some terms we may use the commerce set, the 117 set more heavily, and the healthcare information technology set more heavily. You should probably install them both so you'd be prepared for everything. So let's start by downloading those. Let's start by downloading the HCIT set here. And so I click on that, and in the browser that I'm running, once we get the download link, when we click that, I'm using Internet Explorer 11, and so I have the option to save that directly to a particular directory. If you're using a different browser, you may find that it just downloads to the downloads directory, and then you need to go and move that where you would like to have it. Ultimately, where I would put it is in a folder created just for your CIS 117 work. I've created such a folder in the documents directory for my account on my machine under CIS 117 demo. You might just call yours CIS 117. So I'm going to go ahead and save that file there. And you'll notice that I already had the create and drop script from TAL. So let's go ahead and open a folder and talk about that for just a second. So here's the folder. And I wanted to mention the difference between my scripts and what the textbook publisher has provided. In the scripts I've provided, it includes the statement to completely drop and recreate the entire database and all of its tables. In the textbook publisher's scripts, they have a separate set for dropping the tables and a separate set for creating the tables, but it's up to you to create the database manually if you have wiped the database out or you need to create it for the first time. And you need to issue an explicit use statement to use that database schema, or use that database table space is another name for it, or just use that database, the TAL database, before you start creating the tables. Otherwise, those tables will be created in whatever database you are currently using. By default, that's going to be the master database, which is really a systables database that should only be used for administrative purposes. You don't want to pollute that with actual day-to-day databases that you're using in master. You should put them in their own table space or their own schema. Okay, and I'll show you how to do that momentarily. All right, with that said, let's go ahead and start the SQL Server Management Studio. So I'm going to click on the Windows icon and type SQL, and here I have the SQL Server Management Studio, and let's get that started. And I'm going to go ahead and connect to my local database. And if we take a look under databases, I've just, before we started the video, gone in and wiped them all out, so it's clean, just as if you had done a fresh install of SQL Server and SQL Server Management Studio, but have as yet not installed any of the databases. So let's go ahead and see what that looks like. File, open. It's going to be a file. And we said we put that over in Documents under CIS 117 Demo. And let's open the HCIT SQL script. And you are not required at this point in your SQL Server education to know about what all these different script statements do, but it's never too early to learn a little bit or look ahead. So let's just take a quick look here and see what this script does. So this script starts by switching us to using that master database that I said you really shouldn't do anything in that. That's an administrative. But what that does is that gets us off of the HCIT database. If it already existed and we had been using it, we don't want to stand on the island if it's sinking, right? So we jump over to the master island, and now we can delete that HCIT database if it already exists, or we recreate it. And here I have a conditional statement that says, hey, if that database already exists, then drop it. So if it doesn't exist, this whole piece of logic isn't even going to be executed. But if it does, we'll clean it up. And that's why, as opposed to what the publishers provided, the publisher gave you a separate set of creates and a separate set of drops. I've given you one, and it has the logic to handle all of it. So since it doesn't exist, it's going to go ahead and create the database for us. And once it's created that database schema, that table space, then it's going to wait until it sees that that creates statement has completed, that the database is ready to go on. And then it's going to jump off of master and say, I'm going to start using HCIT. And then it's going to start creating those tables. And when it has finished creating the table structures, it then issues the insert commands that insert the data into those tables, so we'll have our test data. So that's how that's going to work. Let's go ahead and run that. And HCIT is a pretty good size script, so that's going to take a moment or two to run. All right, and so time has passed and the script has run. And then the other thing we want to check in the results is kind of scroll down and see if we see any errors that occurred in the run of that, and it doesn't appear so. And so now if we go over and refresh our databases, we see that HCIT exists. And if we come over and expand the table view, we see that our tables are there, and we could even create a new query and let's say use HCIT and a new entry in the batch. Let's say select star from, and let's just grab the admissions table. And notice as I start typing, once I've issued the use, the IntelliSense feature knows to look at what tables list there, and it sees the tables that are in the table space, and I can autocomplete. So I can either use the up and down arrow to select the table that I want, or just hit tab to select the currently selected table, and it finishes the typing for me. That's really kind of nice, no more tedious typing. And let's execute that, and there we are. And so we have the results of the admissions table. We could just as easily have said select star from the person table. And if you, and this is a neat trick, if you highlight only one query or one set of complete statements, I can't use just part of a statement, but a complete statement, if I highlight it and say execute, it will execute only the highlighted ones. So there's admissions, there's person. That's kind of useful. The other thing is if I run the entire batch, I can have multiple queries execute in the same batch, and I can use the splitter bar here to better arrange some of the screen real estate. And you can see that I can scroll on the results from both batches. So kind of cool. All right. So so far so good. And if I wanted to rerun that script, all I'd have to do is reopen it or reload it and run it again, and that entire database will automatically be dropped and recreated. The really handy thing about that is throughout the term, even after you've initially gotten your environment set up and all your data and tables built and installed, all the data is populated, you can have some of your experimentation go wrong and you accidentally delete records you didn't mean to delete, or you modify records you didn't mean to modify, and then none of your exercises that make certain assumptions about what's in that data will run correctly. You're going to get very funky results that wouldn't be very good. You couldn't tell if you've written the query correctly. I might not be able to tell that you performed the query correctly, and you could lose points over it. So you can always run the create script to set things up fresh. Now, that said, let's take a look at the difference in the textbook publishers' scripts. Let's go ahead and open Create TAL. So here's SQL Server TAL. And you notice that this script, first, you notice that there's a separate script for the create and the drop. So the textbook publisher has separated the creating from the dropping. You got to run those as separate batches. And the other thing is the textbook publisher starts right in on the tables. They haven't made any provision for the database. So right now, if you take a look, which database did we last use? Well, we were in HCIT. So if I run this right now, it will create these tables on this table space, on this schema, HCIT. That's not where we want them. We want to put them in a database called TAL. Okay, so for the publisher scripts, you need to come over, right-click on the database, tell it that you want a new database, and let's give it a name such as TAL, and tell it OK. And now we have the TAL schema, but there are no tables created. And you'd say, great, now I can go ahead and fire off the create table statement. Hold on, because what island are you standing on right now? The last database we used was HCIT, so until I tell it to use the new table space, to use the new schema, it would create those back in HCIT. So let's add a statement up here, use TAL. And we could even highlight and just run that to make sure that that's working properly. Query completed with errors. What did I, user. I want the word use. Okay, so let's highlight that, try it again. Always good to check this, see if that had failed, but the rest of the script had gone on, we would have ended up creating the tables back on the last table schema we'd use, which is HCIT. So execute, okay, so now we're using TAL. We could even delete that, and we're ready to fire off the rest of the batch. Let's execute that. And again, let's take a look and scroll through our results. We should see that there were no errors. Query executed successfully. That's real good. If we come over here and then refresh this and look at the tables, lo and behold, there's our tables in the TAL database. And if we create a new query and we say use TAL as the first part of the batch, and then let's say select star from customer and run that. There we go, and now we've got the TAL database. Okay. Let's say that we want to drop and recreate those tables for the publisher's database. Well, again, we got to do that in piecemeal, in different steps, because of what the publisher has set up. So let's use our tabbed interface. Notice I can leave things still up here, which is kind of handy. And let's go and File, open, file, and let's open the drop tables script. And again, let's make sure, now the last thing we touched was tal, so we should still be using tal. Let's not leave that to chance. Let's say use tal. And now let's run that drop script. Said it completed successfully. If I come over here to tal and refresh, look at the tables. Oh, the tables are gone. Okay. Nothing in the tables. And now we can come back over to our create script. And again, let's add that to, even though the last thing we're using was tal, let's be explicit about it. Don't leave it to chance. And let's run that again. And it ran without error. And so now if we refresh tal again, there are our tables. And if we run our select statement, our data is back, and so we're in good shape. So again, to recap, if you are running the scripts that I created, which are create HCIT and create CIS 117 DB, those are going to create the database for you. If it doesn't already exist, if it already does exist, it's going to wipe it out and then refresh it all. If you're running the publisher scripts, Colonial, TAL, or Solomaris, you're going to need to separately run the create scripts from the drop scripts, and you're going to also need to remember to create the database by hand if it doesn't already exist, and you need to issue the use command to make sure that you are creating the tables in the schema that you intend. Otherwise, you're going to create a database that has a bunch of tables from different databases all under that same database schema. That can be a little bit messy, so best to avoid that situation. If you have questions or problems, give me a email or preferably post to the course Q&A, then we can all benefit from the discussion because everybody can see the discussion in the course Q&A and everybody can chime in and contribute answers and solutions as well as me, or if it's really urgent, as always, give me a call. And thank you for watching.